In leafy Surrey resides a man with a mission, a sane and educated person, a deeply religious soul. His theology passes all understanding, his faith is often questioned, yet he believes with a passionate fervour that the object of his devotion is worthy of canonization. This is a man who spends his life telling his flock to open their hearts to the beauty that is the Austin Allegro.
I love cars, all cars, but I happen to have a soft spot for the Austin Allegro. The shape is absolutely wonderful. I mean, I happen to like the shape of the Allegro. It is a car it's fashionable to make jokes about. The thing is, the car is not as bad as people make it out to be. There is a line where it has to stop because it's bad to insult the taste of someone who owns an Allegro, or indeed to deny the fact it is actually seriously cheap and quite reliable transport.
1973 was not a happy year for British industry. The country was in the grip of one of the worst recessions since the war. Miners, gas workers, dustmen and civil servants were all on strike, and even the TUC couldn't control the unions. The Allegro stumbled, blinking into an anarchic world of commercial chaos when British Leyland workers couldn't wait to rush home from the excitement of a three-day week.
Really, considering you're better off on 3 days. You know, you're getting the same amount of money for doing 5 days.
But not the same amount of production?
Well, you know, this is management-wise, isn't it?
While the rest of Britain fumbled in the darkness, the spotlight fell on British Leyland's great white hope.
Allegro, the new driving force from Austin. Hop in and see us for a test drive.
They say that cars reflect their times. If that's the case, then the Austin Allegro must be remembered as an awful monument to everything that was wrong with British industry in the 70s. And it began life here at the British Leyland factory in Longbridge, Birmingham. It was underdeveloped, designed by blind committees and assembled in an atmosphere of industrial terrorism. This then is the Austin Allegro story. The car that British Leyland once proudly boasted would be their song for Europe. Let it go! Launched on the 17th of May 1973, Allegros kicked off at £950 for the 1100 Deluxe, rising to £1,366 for the unfortunately named 1750 SS. But it wasn't just meant to do battle with the Vauxhall Viva and Hillman Avenger. They had much, much higher hopes.
Very important because this covers the middle range between the 1100 and the 1750, where the bulk of the business is, and it's also a car which we think will appeal not only to the sophisticated British public but to the sophisticated European public, which of course is very much greater now that we're in the common market. It's a car we believe that will appeal to European taste as a whole.
Trouble was, the Allegro's predecessor was a much-loved part of Britain's motoring culture, most of the time.
Well, don't say I haven't warned you! I've laid it on the line to you time and time again! Right, well, this is it! I'm gonna give you a damn good thrashing!
But the 1100 was a great favourite with the British middle classes for over a decade. Neat and crisply styled with transverse engines and hydroelastic suspension, it sold by the million. Now, if BL had only stuck to that original winning formula, things might have been different. But they didn't. Gone with the pin-sharp proportions of the 1100, replaced by something with all the elegance of an old shoe. And it's those bathtub curves that have always haunted the Allegro. So just how could BL's senior management have got it so horribly wrong? Believe it or not, this is how the Allegro's designer had wanted it to look.
The Allegro shape evolved from a package requirement which was dictated by engineering, which was to put in a variety of engines from the 1100 and also to put in the Maxi engine as well. Maxi engine was a rather large engine. There was also a new heater which was carried over from the Marina. But once these new requirements started to come in, the height went up, the body got a little bit more bloated, and from our original concepts that were created in the studio, they weren't able to be achieved anymore. How did you feel when you saw the finished Allegro and compared it to your original rather handsome sketch? Disappointed, really. I think that the specification that we've been dictated to didn't allow us really to regenerate a new 1100.
BL launched the car to the press in sunny Marbella and generated some cheerful first impressions.
British Leyland have got down to some really radical thinking about what the family car should be for Europe in the 70s and the 80s. And here comes the answer, the Allegro. And I must confess, when I first saw it, it's a shape that didn't greatly grab me, but I find the more you see it, the more you like it, it grows on you.
The most radical thing about the Allegro was its new hydrogas suspension, claimed to be an improvement over the 1100's hydroelastic variety.
This strange-looking object is the springing system, the hydrogas unit, one of these two, each wheel taking the place of a spring and a shock absorber. The hydrogas suspension does eliminate, with the aid of a computer, all the faults of the hydroelastic. The hydroelastic got known as the shirt lifter because of the bouncing movements, which would just pull a man's shirt out of the waistband of his trousers driving along. But that's gone. This vertical bounce has disappeared. This is a unique British achievement. They don't roll very much. They really do go very quickly along a winding road.
Some journalists weren't quite so complimentary.
Having driven one again this afternoon for the first time for several years now, it still feels exactly the same. The steering gets heavy when you start to go around corners at any speed. The ride is even bouncier than I remember. The interior is all plastic, which is something that's very quickly told against it. So, no, I can't say that I'm very repentant about the fact that I was rude about it in 1973, 74. But in retrospect, I suppose the only thing you can say is that it stood the test of time a lot better than the other cars that British Leyland launched in the same kind of period.
But it did have inertia reel seat belts, radial ply tyres and a heated rear window as standard, even though the embossed vinyl seats looked about as inviting as Victorian dining chairs. But there was one area of the car upon which everybody agreed, that steering wheels should be round and not square, and that the infamous Cortic wheel was not a good thing.
I must quote you from the brochure at the time. It says, "This must sound like a gimmick," but it isn't. It's more square-shaped than circular, so it gives you a much better look at your instruments when you're driving. It also lets you get in and out of the car more easily. I must say, with hindsight, that says to me that in fact they originally designed it to go with a round steering wheel. You couldn't see the instruments, and you couldn't get in and out properly.
People will accuse me of being biased, but I'm also wearing a dog collar and I am a clergyman. The Quartic wheel, to me, is a totally unremarkable device. It happens to be fitted to a car I like a great deal. I've just driven 4,600 miles in 2 weeks behind one for charity, and I came back and actually wanted to change my everyday car, which has a round steering wheel, to a Quartic, really. I honestly did.